On a practical question, a few years ago, Katanning got a park from John Murphy, $6.5 million. And when I fought it, I was called names that you hear in a biker bar at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was bad. And I was told to sit down, shut up, and quit biting the hand that feeds me. How do you convince state, local, and governments that federal money is not free?
Here's the good news. Over the past year, we've seen, literally millions of people mobilized and motivated through these Tea Parties, the 9/12 groups. We've seen, and we have seen that, the actions that people have taken against this type of wasteful spending being heard in Washington. And in fact, recently here the Republicans have put a moratorium on all earmarks. So it's having an effect. And I think as people like us speak and stand up, we'll see more of that, and we will see the whole earmarking process either done away with or completely reformed, so that we don't have to worry about those things anymore. But it is working, and we are all having an effect. There's no question about it. Thank you.
I think the biggest thing that has happened to convince everybody is that everybody's looking now at the federal checkbook, seeing this massive deficit, how deeply in debt we are, and anybody with half a brain right now is looking at it and going, there is no more federal money to give. And with that realization that for so many years was put aside, but those credit card bills have come due, and the federal government just doesn't have any more to spend on wasteful spending. And so very, very soon we're going to come down to the point where we're going to have to make those very hard decisions and make massive slashes, particularly in the executive department of our government that I outlined earlier.
Thank you.
Wilbur, you're up. Hi, I'm Wilbur Tabasco. I live in Penn Run. I'd like to know how either one of you will combat the corruption in Washington and uphold the Constitution of the United States.
Simple, a straightforward question.
Well, the best way to combat corruption, one, is simply to maintain the standards for which I've lived my life. In nearly 30 years of military service, supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States, I've upheld that standard and enforced it. And I will continue to do that. But that said, there's lots of politicians who tell you they're going to be honest. But the only way I could ever really convince any of you is to prove it. And prove it by that service. So, let's get the opportunity to get in. The most important thing is, as I've given my promise to maintain those standards, is for good people like you to hold us accountable. And that means get out and vote, stand up and be heard, and continue to ask those hard and tough questions of your elected servants.
Thank you. Yeah. I think what I would do is lead by example, first of all. You have to go to Washington and be a good example, because there's no question in my mind that all 435 congressmen are not there for the right reasons. I can assure you that this isn't my dream job. This isn't something I've always wanted to do, but this is something that I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to do. And I can assure you that when I make decisions, they will be based on what is in the best interest of the district and the country, and that every decision that I make will be made with my kids in mind, and your kids, and all young and future Americans. And as far as, and I think there's really two things that we need to be looking at when we send somebody to Washington. Not only somebody that will vote the way that you would vote or represent the values that you have, but somebody that can also go down to Washington and express why those values are important to those that may not feel the same way as we do. And I think that I can be persuasive, and I can explain why these values are important, why it's simple things like why we can't spend more money than what we have. So I think there are two things that we can do when we, as far as fighting the corruption. So.